So we will introduce and talk about, or they will talk about design systems at work. But before we share that information with you, we go through this agenda. We have a small introduction, efficient design libraries and how to build them, and testing design systems. And last but not least, there is also time. En
je gaat met dezelfde microfoon moeten doorgeven, want in die is niet iets.
Oké.
Ja, sorry.
No problem. Moest er nog iets?
Nee, is okay.
So this introduction about Springbok. So we are Springbok. Hi. Maybe Jeroen, you can introduce yourself, but then you need a mic. Maybe we should have a mic, just a hand.
A portable one.
Mic.
I'm Jeroen van Norren. I'm definitely not a UXer. I'm a design lead at Springbok Agency already for 9 years. Sounds like a Dino. I'm Dutch. Born and raised in Holland, so maybe I just highlighted. Maybe that's important. Work professionally already in 4 countries. I'm really proud of that because I want to have more countries. And I love Bali. I'm a big Bali fan. Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Yes. All right, and hi, I'm Jonas. I'm a UI designer in Jeroen's team. I've studied at the Thomas More Mechelen Hogeschool, right nearby our office. And I've been officially at Springbok for 2 years, but I've been hanging around here for about 5 years as an intern and as a student. My dog's name is Louis, as you can see. He's very lively. And yeah, I love movies and TV.
So what we do at Springbok is that we try to reinvent digital for brands with ambition. That's about continuously optimizing. Eigenlijk ken ik die babbel niet. So we reinvent digital for brands with ambition. Doe maar de volgende. Ik heb die niet gezien, die slides erop nou.
I will do it.
Heb jij die wel gezien?
Ja.
Oké.
No, it is.
Hier.
Yeah. Oops. It's just a few slides because we wanted to introduce how we work and who we are, and we recently merged with a lot of other companies, also in the Netherlands and in Belgium, here in Mechelen and in Brussels. So that's why we thought, okay, we put the slides because then you get confirmed what you maybe saw in the press or something. So what is very different in Springbok, or different how I see it, because I worked in other agencies and in other companies before, is that here, and it is due to the fact that many companies came together, that one of the things that are very important here are the connections between everyone. So we are not organized in departments all over, but we work for clients, and for clients we say, okay, what is the best team to have, and then we make connections, and we can work with teams in Mechelen, but we work with the people from Brussels, we work with the people from Den Bosch or Amsterdam, and the teams really collaborate for our clients. So meaningful connections, and the connections is something very important, and it will come back, and if you want to know more about it, you can always read on the website, because I leave the stage to Jonas and Jeroen.
All right, so efficient design libraries, and I will be specifically talking also about Figma. It's the design tool that we work with, both for like wireframes and UI design. And if you're not working with Figma, I would highly recommend it because it's a great tool. We switched over from Sketch about a year and a half ago, and we'll never turn back, I think.
No.
We're very big fans of Figma.
Out of curiosity, who works with Figma already?
All right, great. So first, yes. So first, a design library. For those who don't know, a design library is a collection of guidelines and branding elements that describe a design system. So it's basically everything that encompasses a brand or a design system. So if you're talking about specific brands, it's their typography, their colors, just every visual design element that you can see when you interact with that brand. And then a design library, how we set it up is with the atomic design methodology. It's a certain way to set up your design library. It starts with, well, we added the core. So the core is all of the, what I described previously. It's all of the colors, it's the typography, it's the icons that we use. It's all of the core elements that define the brand. And then when you have that core, you start building to really make it a design system. So for instance, when we talk about atoms, we talk about CTA buttons, which use the typography and the colors that you defined in the core. So it always starts building to a bigger system. So for instance, molecules can be different paragraphs combined together with then a CTA button added below it. So it's just a combination of different atoms. And so we go on to organisms. Those are components that we use in UI design. So when you visit a website or a mobile app, it will mostly be built with components. So you have different components on your page, and those components, again, are made out of different molecules that are made out of different atoms. So this way you can see that everything is connected, and you start with something very small, like a color or a certain font, and then you start building on it to eventually get a whole brand and a design system. Now, as an example, one of our clients came to us with a question to redesign their website. And their current setup that they had was they had 3 design libraries. They were still made in Sketch. So they had one for branding, which was what we define as the core. The assets is what we defined as the atoms and the molecules, and then the components they had for the organisms. So they had 3 separate libraries that you always had to go look, okay, I need a button, then I had to go to the second library, I needed a component, and I had to go to the third library. And they asked us to redesign their website and also include light mode and dark mode. And they gave us 2 examples of 2 separate libraries, one for light mode and one for dark mode, that we had to incorporate in their previously existing 3 libraries. So we started thinking, okay, how can we make this more efficient? So eventually we came up with the new design library, which is just all of this in black and gray combined into one single library to make it much easier to work with and much more efficient to quickly create new designs. So how do we set up a library efficiently? Of course, we started with all of the basic elements. We defined the colors, we defined the typography, we defined all of the icons that they use. And then we started making the CTA buttons, the molecules. But then when we really got to it, we started thinking, okay, but how can we make it even more efficiently? And then we have 2 methods that we use to really make it an easy-to-use tool. So the first thing is that variants in Figma are your best friend. For those of you that know variants, you have a CTA button, and you can then create variants of that CTA button to have the hover state, the disabled state, the active state. And those are the most use cases of the variants in Figma, but we took those a step further. So you can have size variants, you can have a small button, you can have a big button, but we went even further with responsive design. Most of the time, and also in the previous libraries from our client, they had a component for the desktop version of that component, and they had a separate component to have the mobile version. So when you were creating designs, you always had the options. They sometimes even had like a tablet version, but now we can combine them into variants, and I'll show you in a minute what I mean with it, because it's a bit abstract right now, but I'll definitely show you. And we also added light and dark mode within the same variants and also layout differences. And then the second thing that we use to make it more efficient is a period-based component. These components make it much easier to control your components. They provide consistency across all of your components. They make it way easier to apply changes. And they also, you can also immediately see, okay, a CTA button has an icon. It can show the icon on the left, on the right. You can immediately see, okay, everything that needs to be in the component, which is easy for developers, so they immediately have a view, okay, this is what I need to develop. But now I will show you how it works. So here we have our library. And as you can see, we have divided it up in different pages. So the first one is the core. As I said, we have the colors, the typography, how the spacing should be added. We have icons, shadows, everything is here. So those are the basic building blocks. And then we go a step bigger with the atoms. You can see that we have, for instance, the buttons here, and some other elements that you can use. Then we have the molecules. So these are built from the atoms. And then here we have the organisms. So these are all of the components that they now can use on their website. And so how this works is you go into the pages, and then here you can see I will start to build a page with the components that we have. So we first drag in the main navigation. We can then have a header component, maybe some products, a review. Then we can, for instance, have the blog layout, and we can add a footer to finish our page. So it's very easy to really quickly build a page in Figma, and then you have the possibility to really make some noticeable changes. So for instance, when I want to change the images, I can just put in some new images. Let me see if it works. So I will use these images. And then we have to wait a little because they're quite big. All right, so then I can just go and replace all of the images here. I'll just do all of them, all right. And so you can start to build really intricate designs. For instance, you can also start to edit texts. So I'm just going to write something, test, headline. All right. And then how we set it up in the variants is that it can now be very easily transformed into light and dark mode. So let's say that I now have created my page in light mode. Then I can just easily create a copy of this page. And then I can simply just go into my edit settings for the component, and I can just go to mode and change it to dark mode. And then if I switch all of my components to dark mode, and we now have our whole page in dark mode. And as you can see, the images that we have input in our light mode, they also translate to the dark mode component. So how variants work here is that if we just had a light mode component and a dark mode component, the images you would manually have to re-add the same images, but now you can just switch the components from light mode to dark mode, and it makes it way faster to work. And then the same thing for responsive design. Usually when you make a UI design, you create the desktop page, or you start with a mobile page. And then when that's finished, all of the feedback rounds have been done, you can just go ahead and create a new page for the mobile version. But now with how we set it up is that you can just drag your or make a duplicate of your page and do the same thing here and just go to mobile. And then you get a mobile version of your page in just seconds. And as you can see, all of the text and images, they just get translated to your new version. So how we used to in Sketchwork, we had to manually re-add everything again, or resize your components. So that's, yeah, this is a way more efficient way to work. And then for instance, for this blog layout, we have also created separate layouts in our variants. So it just makes it very easy to switch different layouts for the articles, and all of the text, all of the images, they just easily get, they just move, and you don't have to make separate versions anymore, which saves a lot of time for us designers, and also for the developers. It just gives a very clear overview of all of the possibilities, and yeah, I think that's about it for the variants. And then also, yeah, so the other thing that I mentioned was the base component. So what we used to do was when we create a button, for example, you just create your button and then you start creating all of the different versions. So the hover version, the active version, disabled version, and then, for example, with the icon on the right, icon on the left, no icon. That's how we used to work. And then when you wanted, for instance, the clients change their mind and they say, okay, we don't want rounded corners anymore, you had to go and change each button separately and undo the rounded corners. But if you set up a base component, then you just have to edit the rounded corners on one version, and normally, yeah, it's here, it will change on all of your buttons just in seconds, which makes it a lot more easier to work with and makes it more consistent, because it will change in this component, but it will also change in, as you can see here, we now have squared buttons. So it's way easier to maintain your components and maintain your design system to make sure that everything is consistent. And now,
Not everywhere.
yeah, that's probably my fault because it's a testing library, but normally it works if you've set it up correctly. And now I will give the word to Jeroen.
Thank you, Jonas. You give the whole presentation. I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to do it fast. Of course, we also like to test our designs. I'm definitely not a UXer, so I'm not used to test with people and groups.
You are a UXer.
Thank you, Maarten. But we use some nice plugins in Figma. Oh, sorry, I need to talk. Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah. Perfect. All right. We use some plugins in Figma to test our designs. This is one plugin that I really like. It's called Visual Eyes. It's super cheap. It's not that expensive. You buy credits, and what it does, it gives you a kind of a heat map of your design. So you can do a heat map comparison. It's kind of an A/B testing between. You can try out different things, and it will generate a heat map. It's predictive software, so it's based on. Does it give a number somewhere? It has based on how many people?
A lot.
Yeah, a lot of people. They put it in in AI, and it's this tool. It also has a visual clarity comparison element in there. But what I really like about it is that you get a kind of result in seconds. It's much cheaper than what we used to do before. We were at the client and we were doing like really heat map recordings and that kind of stuff, and it took a long time. But this is just in 1 second for, what does it cost? Maybe $1 per test, even cheaper maybe.
Very cheap.
It's super cheap, and this already helped us to convince clients for certain designs, and also to give a cool impression. Sometimes we also use it for offline material. Maybe it's not good, but I quite like it to try it out on different things. This is how it works. So it's a little plugin in Figma. It's loading. Yeah, and we already have a result there. So this is the and what is it? And this is the heat map. So this is the attention map. We can already have useful data here, and what we saw in our design, Jonas, we tried it out in different variations, and we saw big differences in this testing, and then we also have a clarity testing. So yeah, this is more like a clutter, so it gives kind of an indication where it's cluttered, where not. Okay, this is maybe not that interesting. I think the heat map is more interesting than this, but it definitely helps to make your design better. In a very cheap way. And we use it a lot. I think we use it for big projects, small projects. I even use it for print, but I have no idea if it's okay, but I just do it. Because for me it works. It gives kind of an idea. And also, I also sell it to clients like that, and they are like, wow, what's this? Because offline clients are not used to heat mapping and that kind of stuff. So they, and there's also comparison, but yeah, then we need to select maybe 2 screens. Okay, those screens are quite the same, but let's see what it gives. Maybe it does. Sorry. Yeah, so you're taking one. Okay, next time we show that. But yeah, this is only one plugin that we use. We use a lot of plugins. We also use plugins to make banners in 5 minutes. HTML banners. There are a lot of interesting plugins in Figma. For me, that's the big thing in this whole program, that you have a lot of plugins. It's always constantly updating. You can even talk with developers of those plugins to ask them questions. Can you fix that? Can you do that? And it's, we already had a lot of nice interactions with the people that are making plugins. So yeah, definitely check this one out. I really like this one. It will definitely help your work. So yeah, that was our talk. Jonas did the whole presentation. Thank you, Jonas. You did it perfectly. One question.
Thanks so much. I'll take a couple questions. I just want to say thank you for the great talk so far. Super interesting. And I also just want to say, if you're into Figma plugins, there's a really cool one called Weavely that allows you to do instant prototypes using real data. And if you want to talk to this ambitious young founder about his plugin, he's right here in the front. So that's awesome. And we've got a couple questions from the audience, actually from the YouTube audience, which I'll read really quickly to get us started.
I'll give the microphone to the expert.
So the first one is, so if a client asks for a new website, do you start by designing full pages, or do you start from the library and go from there?
Good question. Depends a little bit, Jonas. But most of the time, I think we design first by doing components. We think about components, not really by doing full pages. That's how we work normally, but it depends a little bit on what kind of website it is. Sometimes we also don't use atomic design systems. It also depends on what kind of client it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on if it's a new client, if they already have something like an existing library. If they don't have anything, then we usually start putting some ideas for components on the page, and then we translate them into components. But always the first thing is the colors, typography. Those are the main things.
Nice. Yeah, it depends. I'm sure everybody needs buttons, so you're always going to start with a little bit of both, probably, right?
Yep.
So there's another question, like, do you have any tips on the best way to actually manage this over time within a company? Like, who needs to own it? How do you manage acceptance criteria for new components? Any tips there?
Oh, that's good. You give the presentation. I cannot mention the client, but...
Well, for our clients, I think mostly we own like own. We are the owners of the library, so they are on our Figma, and we make the updates. They also, some of our clients also have their own Figma account. So then we just export the library that we made, and they can import them on their own library. But then it's a bit out of our hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we have the library, then they can just come to us with new requests, and then we will update the library, and they can just use it from there.
And the cool thing is, Jonas also gives training to people to how to use the library, to marketing people, to people that manage the CMS and kind of stuff.
Nice.
So
Just did a little bit. Okay, great. Does anyone have a question from the audience? Yeah, go for it.
Yes, thank you very much. I also have to talk on this. Okay. I'm also a UI UX designer, and what I often experience is that you come in a new project and you want to set up a design system, and you set the design system into Figma. It's an awesome tool, but what I find the difficult part is to find a meaningful connection to the developers. How do you bridge the gap between design and development? Because now you talked about the design system, but it was more of a library within Figma. I'm just curious what your experience is on connecting that library to a development environment.
Well, I think for us here at Springbok, our developers also have access to the Figma, so they can just dive into the Figma file. The way we set up our library is that we have a clear overview of all of the components, what needs to be in them. We also have like a little bit of explanation about how it should work, and then they can just dive in there. We also have a lot of communication with them. If they have questions, they can always reach out to us. And then, of course, in Figma, you have like the little inspect tool, so they can just easily export CSS code right out of Figma, which makes it also a lot easier for them. But then sometimes we also make a functional analysis, so it's just a separate document where we really explain like, okay, this component should work in this and this way. If there are certain animations, you can also explain it there. But yeah, mostly they just go into the Figma file and just we start from there.
Yeah, we used to work with Zeppelin before, but everything is now in Figma, so we dropped that tool. In Vision also, we throw that.
So it's not like, sorry. Yes. So there isn't like any environment where you have some coding guidelines or snippets or some do's and don'ts about don't use icons without labels or accessibility stuff or things like that,
No.
more development oriented.
Do we do that?
Yeah, in our library we have like some explanation. Okay, yeah, you can do this with the component, you can't do this, but it's not only for the developers, it's also for the client itself, or like their marketing, their CMS people who have to build pages within the library. So just some small, small explanations, and then as well in a functional analysis, you can really go into deeper into
I think
those.
that's the document where we put a lot of information. It's also very sometimes complex to make those documents. You already did it a few times. I don't even dare to do it because I will definitely make a mess of it. Out of it. Thank you.
Anyone else want the fuzzy boy? I have one more quick one before we wrap up. So have you ever had to roll out a new design library on an existing site where maybe it was a transition instead of a big bang redesign? And if so, any tips there?
Yeah, we did, huh? No? We did, right? Sure. No. Of course. For other clients, the design already exists. There was kind of a design library already, more like also a print library in Figma, and they asked us to build a new library with those elements. But also, of course, there were elements or components that were not included, so we also had some freedom to think about new components. So that's all. We also do that. We don't start from scratch. Sometimes we start already from a base. Sometimes there's already a lot. The examples you saw there was already a lot of material existing from a previous project in another country. Yeah.
Very cool.
Do you include animations in the design system?
Do you include animations in your design system?
Yes, we do that, and we do that by using GIFs in our designs. Yeah, it's really easy to just make a GIF. We also use plugins in Figma to make simple animations. I'm definitely not an animator, but we can even make some animations in there. We use, yeah, most of the time it's GIFs.
The prototyping tool in Figma.
Yeah.
Like for example, the buttons they have, if you go into the prototype, they have the hover ability. So that's just right from within Figma as well.
Yeah.
That's for the simpler stuff.
And for very complex animations, we put it most of the time in a document or somewhere else, and then we put a link in this document where, okay, you can find animation here. But for simple animations, we use GIFs.
Okay. Good to know.
Do
Any
you
last?
check with developers if the animation is at all feasible to implement for real? Because
Most of the time I do it because I just want to build something, and I'm like, here it is, and then they are like, we cannot make that, and I'm like, okay, well, then we try something else.
So the GIFs are just a demonstration towards the animators, and then
Yeah.
you get feedback.
Yeah,
Okay.
but no, definitely, yeah, it's a conversation that we have together with the builders of the website, the developers.
yeah,
Are we able to build this? And then they're like, no, and I'm like, okay, are you able to build this? And then well, maybe, and then we'll enter something.
They say straight away they say it's not possible, but
yeah,
most of the time it's possible, but they think it's too much work.
It's
that's inherently true. I agree.
We know that it's possible, so
no, so we try a lot of things. We try sometimes very complex things, but it also depends on what kind of system the website is running, of course, and what's possible. So, and to be honest, in the beginning of a project, or if I make a design, I don't look too much at the feasibilities. I just try and see where I can land. But yeah, that also gives sometimes a conflict or a problem. Yeah.
So we haven't eliminated conversation and collaboration offline yet. So, but that's probably a good thing. Right? Okay. Thanks, you guys. It's really informative. Yes, clap, clap.
All right. Thank you.
We'll take a quick 15-minute break. We'll come back at 8 o'clock. Feel free to grab some more food or some refreshment in the back. The toilets are all the way around to the left. You just keep going to the left. Oh, or there's a shortcut there too. Then it's to the right. See you at 8 o'clock for Katsu's talk.